The night was unusually quiet in the small American town of Millhaven. Streetlights flickered like they were struggling to stay awake, and the wind carried a strange heaviness, as if something unseen was watching. That was the night people first started talking about him, the silent man who never spoke, never smiled, and never stayed in one place too long. He sat alone on the wooden bench near the old gas station every evening at exactly 6:04 p.m. No phone. No conversation. Just silence. And in that silence, there was something unsettling, something that made people wonder what kind of past could create a man like that. Nobody knew his name. But everyone had a theory. Some said he was a runaway criminal. Others whispered he had done something terrible and was hiding from the law. But the truth was far more painful than anyone could imagine. Before we begin today's story, if you believe in kindness and love emotional real life stories, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Story Hub, like this video, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories that can inspire hearts across the world. Now, let's begin the journey of the silent man and uncover the truth behind his dark past. His name was Daniel Reed. But in Millhaven, no one called him that. To them, he was simply the silent man. Daniel didn't choose silence because he had nothing to say. He chose it because the world had stopped listening to him a long time ago. He rented a tiny room above an abandoned bookstore. Every morning, he left before sunrise and returned after dark. He worked at the local warehouse, lifting heavy boxes without ever speaking a word to his co-workers. They tried talking to him once or twice, but his responses were always the same: small nods, empty eyes, and silence. People found silence uncomfortable. And Daniel's silence felt heavy, like it carried a story nobody wanted to hear. One evening, something changed. A young girl named Emily, about 10 years old, dropped her backpack near the gas station bench where Daniel sat. Papers flew everywhere in the wind. Without thinking, Daniel quietly stood up and helped gather them. His movements were slow, careful, almost like someone who had once been afraid of sudden motion. Emily looked at him and smiled. "Thank you, sir." Daniel hesitated, then nodded slightly. That was it. No words. But something about that small moment shifted everything. For the first time, someone in town saw him not as a threat, but as a person. The next day, Emily returned. And the day after that too. She started sitting on the opposite end of the bench, talking about school, her friends, and her dreams of becoming a nurse. Daniel never interrupted. He just listened. Listening was something he was good at. Slowly, without even realizing it, Emily became the only person in Millhaven who wasn't afraid of him. One afternoon, she asked, "Why don't you ever talk, Mr. Daniel?" The question froze him. His hands tightened slightly. His eyes drifted toward the ground. For a long moment, he said nothing. Emily didn't push. She just waited. Finally, in a voice so soft it almost disappeared into the wind, Daniel whispered, "Talking doesn't always change anything." And then he stopped again. But that was the first word he had spoken in over 3 years. News travels fast in small towns. People noticed Emily sitting with him. They watched from windows. They whispered again, but this time, the tone began to change. Maybe he's not dangerous. Maybe he's just broken. But brokenness still made people uncomfortable. One evening, a man from the neighborhood confronted him outside the gas station. "You better not be messing with that little girl," he said sharply. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply lowered his eyes and walked away. But Emily saw everything. And for the first time, she asked him to stay. "Don't listen to them," she said. "I think you're nice." That word, nice, hit Daniel harder than anything else in years. Because nobody had ever called him that before. Days turned into weeks. Emily learned small things about him. He liked sitting in silence. He always carried a folded piece of paper in his pocket. And sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his eyes looked sadder than words could describe. One rainy afternoon, Emily finally asked, "What happened to you?" Daniel stared at the falling rain for a long time. His face tightened, like something inside him was fighting to stay buried. "I used to be a firefighter," he said quietly. Emily's eyes widened. "There was a fire," he continued. "An apartment building. We got the call too late. I went in anyway." His voice cracked slightly. "I got one family out, but I couldn't reach the others in time." Silence filled the air again. "I tried to go back in," he whispered. "But they pulled me out. Said it was too dangerous." The building collapsed minutes later. Emily stayed very still. People called me a hero at first, Daniel said. Then they started asking why I didn't save everyone. He swallowed hard. I stopped talking after that. Now everything made sense. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was guilt. It was grief that had no place to go. It was a man carrying a weight no one else could see. Emily didn't know what to say. So she did something simple. She reached out and gently held his hand. You still saved someone, she said softly. That matters. Daniel closed his eyes. For a moment, the world felt quieter than it had in years. After that day, something began to change in him. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But slowly, like a door cracking open after being locked for too long. He started staying a little longer at the bench. Sometimes, he would even answer Emily with short sentences. Did you eat today? Yes. Are you okay? Trying. They weren't big conversations. But they were real. And for Daniel, real was something he had lost a long time ago. One evening, something unexpected happened. Emily didn't show up. Daniel waited. 6:04 p.m. passed. Then 6:20. Then 7 o'clock. He stood up for the first time in years and walked toward her neighborhood. His heart felt uneasy in a way he didn't understand. When he reached her house, he saw flashing lights. Police cars. People gathered outside. His chest tightened. Emily had been in a bicycle accident. Without thinking, Daniel rushed forward, but stopped at the edge of the crowd. He wasn't allowed closer. He wasn't family. But then a paramedic stepped out and said, "We need blood." Same type. Fast. Daniel didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," he said. It was the clearest sentence he had spoken in years. At the hospital, as he lay on the bed donating blood, he stared at the ceiling lights. For the first time, his past didn't feel like a cage. It felt like preparation. Like everything he had survived was leading to this one moment, where he could still save someone. Hours later, the doctor came out. "She's stable," he said. Daniel exhaled slowly. A breath he didn't know he was holding for years. When Emily woke up 2 days later, Daniel was sitting outside her room. She smiled weakly. "You came." Daniel nodded. Then, after a long silence, he said something he had not said in years, something that surprised even himself. "I'm staying this time." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Good," she whispered. "Because I don't want you to disappear again." From that day forward, Millhaven slowly began to see Daniel differently. He was no longer the silent man. He was the man who had once run into fire for strangers, and later gave blood to save a child who believed in him when no one else did. People don't forget stories like that. But more importantly, Daniel didn't forget what kindness had done for him. Years later, Daniel still sat on that same bench. But now, he wasn't alone. Emily would sit beside him, talking about her life as a nursing student. Sometimes they would laugh. Sometimes they would just sit in silence. But it was no longer heavy silence. It was peaceful silence. And sometimes, when new people passed by and asked about him, the townsfolk would simply say, "That's Daniel." A man who found his voice again, because one small act of kindness refused to give up on him. In a world that often judges too quickly and listens too little, Daniel's story reminds us of something powerful. You never truly know what someone is carrying inside. Sometimes, the quietest people have the loudest pain. And sometimes, all it takes to heal a broken soul is one moment of kindness that says, "You matter." So today, choose kindness. Because you might be the reason someone finds their voice again.